The sun and the moon were humanity's original timekeepers. Long before the first clock was ever built, every ancient culture looked to the heavens to measure the days, the seasons, and the very years of their lives. This video will reveal the astonishing astronomical secrets carved into stone and written in the stars, showing you how our modern sense of time was born from celestial observation. We will see how a stone circle in England could predict the solstice, and why a pyramid in Egypt aligns with perfect precision to the stars. By the end, you will understand the night sky as our species' first and most important clock, a legacy still embedded in every calendar we use today. How did watching the stars shape the very foundations of human civilization? This celestial rhythm became the heartbeat of early civilization. From the moment the sun first peeked over the eastern horizon to its final descent in the west, it carved a reliable path across the sky, dividing light from darkness. That was the first and most fundamental unit of time, the solar day. But our ancestors saw more than just a bright light moving overhead. They noticed that the sun did not rise and set in the same spot every day. Over the course of a year, the point of sunrise would slowly march along the horizon, moving northward until it reached a farthest limit at the summer solstice, then retreating southward to its other extreme at the winter solstice. This annual journey was the cosmic calendar, dictating the seasons for planting and harvest, for migration and celebration. Alongside the sun, the moon offered its own silent metronome, cycling through its phases from slender crescent to full luminous disk and back again every 29.5 days. This lunar month provided a shorter, more intimate rhythm, perfect for tracking shorter periods and organizing community rituals. What's truly remarkable is how this understanding was not the secret of one isolated culture. From the deserts of Egypt to the plains of Mesopotamia, from the islands of the Pacific to the forests of the Americas, people independently looked up and recognized these same patterns. They built their lives, their laws, and their legends upon this celestial clockwork. Time itself was not abstract. It was a story written in the movements of gods and heroes across the heavens. To measure time was to participate in a sacred dialogue with the cosmos. This profound connection between the earthly and the divine is what we see etched into the world's oldest monuments, stone libraries built not with words, but with alignments to the sun, moon, and stars. That single piercing ray of light at Stonehenge was not an accident. It was a declaration carved in 25-ton blocks of sarsen stone. For the people who raised this monument over 4,000 years ago, the solstice sunrise was more than a beautiful spectacle. It was a vital piece of agricultural data. Their entire way of life depended on knowing precisely when to plant crops and when to prepare for the leaner months of winter. By anchoring their calendar to the sun's most extreme northern and southern risings, they created a reliable, year-long clock. The architecture itself tells this story, the outer circle and the iconic trilithons framing the solstice sunrises and sunsets with breathtaking accuracy. This was a communal project of staggering scale, requiring generations of labor to transport and shape these stones from quarries miles away. Such an effort speaks to a profound shared belief that synchronizing human activity with the cosmos was essential for survival and spiritual harmony. Stonehenge stands as a testament to a truth we sometimes forget, that timekeeping began not as a personal convenience, but as a sacred, society-wide necessity. And as we shift our gaze from the misty plains of England to the clear desert skies of Egypt, we find this same celestial obsession manifested in even more precise and enduring forms. While Stonehenge tracked the sun's journey across the horizon, another civilization looked to the fixed points of the night sky, achieving a level of precision that still baffles engineers today. The Great Pyramid of Giza is far more than a royal tomb. It is a monument of celestial alignment built with an accuracy that seems to defy its ancient age. Each of its four massive sides aligns almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with an error margin of less than a fraction of a single degree. To achieve this, the builders did not have a magnetic compass. They had something far more reliable, the stars themselves. They likely used the circumpolar stars, those that never set, rotating around the celestial pole, to find true north with meticulous care. This was not just a display of skill, it was a profound statement. In ancient Egyptian belief, the pharaoh's soul would ascend to join the imperishable stars, the ones that never disappeared from the sky. The pyramid, therefore, was a physical launch pad, a permanent connection between the earthly ruler and the eternal cosmic order. This connection may have been built right into the pyramid's very structure. Deep within the king's chamber, narrow shafts angle upward through the millions of stone blocks. For a long time, these were thought to be merely ventilation shafts, but astronomers have proposed a more celestial purpose. One of these shafts points directly toward the northern sky, and around the year 2500 before Common Era, it would have framed the star Thuban, which was the pole star at that time. Another shaft aimed toward the belt of the constellation Orion, associated with the god Osiris. This suggests the pyramid was a kind of stone telescope, designed to channel the spiritual essence of specific stars directly to the pharaoh's resting place. The precision extends to the pyramid's very shape and dimensions, which some researchers believe encode mathematical knowledge of the Earth's size and the length of the solar year. Whether intentional or not, the structure stands as a silent witness to a culture that saw the heavens as a blueprint and architecture as a way to mirror the cosmos on Earth. This desire to map the sky and predict its movements would soon lead to the birth of something we use every day, a formal, written calendar. And for that story, we must turn from monumental stone to something far more humble, yet equally enduring, the clay tablet. Across the sands of Egypt, the celestial blueprint was carved in stone, but in the river valleys of Mesopotamia, it was pressed into clay. Babylonian priest astronomers, sitting in the temples known as ziggurats, did not just watch the stars, they listened to them. To them, every celestial event was a divine pronouncement, a coded message from the gods about the fate of the kingdom, the success of the harvest, or the health of the ruler. A sudden eclipse was not merely a shadow crossing the moon. It could be an ominous warning of a king's potential illness. The steady march of planets against the backdrop of fixed stars was a narrative of coming conflicts or prosperity. They documented these perceived correlations with meticulous care on thousands of cuneiform tablets, creating the world's first detailed archives of the night sky. This practice, known as celestial divination, fused science with spirituality in a way that is foreign to us today. For the Babylonians, predicting a lunar eclipse was not just a mathematical triumph, it was an act of political and spiritual necessity, allowing priests to perform rituals to avert the predicted misfortune. This urgent need to understand and anticipate the gods will drove them to observe with incredible precision. Over centuries, they identified repeating patterns, the cycles of the moon that gave us the lunar month, and the longer, more complex cycles of planets. They realized these cycles were predictable, that the heavens operated on a kind of divine but decipherable mathematics. And from this need to calculate and divide these celestial cycles, they gifted the world a system so enduring we barely think about it. They chose the number 60 as their base. Why 60? It is a wonderfully practical number, easily divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30. This made complex fractions simple. From this, they divided the circle into 360 degrees, and later, when they needed to finer slices of the day, They divided the hour into 60 minutes and the minute into 60 seconds. Our entire global system for measuring both time and angles, the sexagesimal system, is a direct inheritance from these ancient sky watchers. Their legacy is a profound duality, the superstitious search for omens in the stars ironically giving birth to the rigorous mathematical science of astronomy. It reminds us that the human quest to measure time has always been about more than practicality. It is about seeking order, meaning, and a sense of control within the vast and mysterious cosmos. This same drive to find order in the cycles of heaven would lead another culture, separated by an ocean, to build a calendar of such stunning accuracy that it rivals our own. Far from the ordered clay tablets of Mesopotamia, in the dense rainforests of Central America, a different kind of celestial mathematics flourished. The Maya did not merely track time, they wove it into the very fabric of existence, creating a system of interlocking calendars so sophisticated it remains a marvel of human intellect. For them, time was not a straight line but a sacred wheel with different cycles spinning simultaneously, each governing a distinct layer of reality. At the heart of daily and ritual life was the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred round. This was not tied to any astronomical body like the sun or moon, but was a spiritual almanac, a combination of 13 numbers and 20-day names that created a unique 260-day signature. It dictated the timing of ceremonies, the fortunes of individuals, and the qualities of each day, treating time itself as a living, divine force. Alongside this ran the Hob, a 365-day solar calendar for agriculture and civil affairs, divided into 18 months of 20 days plus a short, unlucky period of 5 days. But the true genius and the source of much modern mystery was the long count. This was the calendar for history and prophecy, measuring vast stretches of time in units that boggle the mind. It counted days from a mythical starting point, grouping them into ever larger cycles, uinals, tons, catons, and bactons. One bacton is about 394 solar years. The completion of a 13-bacton cycle, which fell in the year 2012, sparked global fascination and fear about an impending apocalypse. But the Maya saw it not as an end, but as a turning point, the closing of one grand cosmic chapter and the dawn of another, much like our own celebration of a new millennium. This profound understanding was built on breathtakingly accurate observation. Maya astronomers, peering from temple observatories like the Caracol at Chichen Itza, calculated the solar year to be 365.2420 days. Our modern measurement is 365.2422 days. Their error was less than 1/10,000th of a day per year. They also meticulously charted the 584-day cycle of Venus, the morning and evening star, which they associated with war and divinity, timing royal coronations and military campaigns to its appearances. For the Maya, this precision was a sacred duty. The cosmos was a delicate balance of forces, and by keeping the calendars, by performing the correct rituals at the exact celestial moment, the priests were quite literally holding the world in order, preventing chaos from descending. This view of time as a sacred, cyclical responsibility stands in stark contrast to the approach being developed across the Atlantic, where a rising empire would reshape time into a tool of administration, power, and daily civic life. But a calendar for kings and a calendar for the cosmos could not tell a farmer when to meet someone at the market. For that, humanity needed a smaller, more personal slice of time, the hour. And to capture it, they turned shadow into a tool. The earliest sundials were simple stakes in the ground, a gnomon whose moving shadow divided the sunlit day. Yet this seemingly straightforward device held a profound celestial quirk. Ancient cultures, from Egypt to Greece, divided the daylight period into 12 equal parts. But because the length of daylight changes with the seasons, a summer hour was much longer than a winter hour. These were known as temporary or unequal hours. Time itself on a daily scale was elastic, stretching and contracting with the sun's own journey. This reflected a deep understanding that human activity was still bound to the natural rhythm, not forcing nature into a rigid, artificial box. The Romans, masters of civic order, brought this celestial time into the heart of public life. They erected grand sundials in their forums, some so large they used entire obelisks as the gnomon. For the first time, the hour became a shared, communal fact. A citizen could look up at the shadow creeping across marble lines to know when the courts were in session or when a public meeting would begin. Celestial time was no longer just for priests and astronomers. It was for merchants, politicians, and everyday people, synchronizing the heartbeat of an empire. Yet the sun is a fickle timekeeper on a cloudy day, and it abandons the sky entirely at night. To fill this gap, inventors looked from the sky above to the element below, water. The clepsydra, or water clock, was a stroke of genius in its simplicity. One vessel would slowly drain into another at a regulated rate, and markings on the inside showed the passage of time as the water level fell or rose. From the courts of ancient China to the workshops of Alexandria, these devices liberated timekeeping from clear skies. They measured the length of speeches in Athenian assemblies, timed the watches of the night for Roman sentries, and even regulated the turns of patients in early medical practices. But here is the beautiful paradox. Even this mechanical device remained tethered to the stars. How did you know your water clock was accurate? You calibrated it against the most reliable clock you had, the heavens. At noon, when the sun reached its highest point, you would mark the water level. At night, you might check it against the transit of a known star. The water clock was a mechanical imitation of a celestial cycle, a human attempt to bottle the river of time that flowed overhead. This evolution from observing a shadow to regulating a flow represents a pivotal moment. Timekeeping was becoming less about simply witnessing cosmic order and more about creating a portable, usable representation of it. This shift set the stage for time to become more than a natural phenomenon. It began its transformation into a social construct, a commodity, and eventually a force that would govern every aspect of human life in ways the builders of Stonehenge could never have imagined. The water clock was a brilliant imitation of the cosmos, but one discovery from the depths of the sea revealed an ambition that went far beyond imitation. In the year 1901, sponge divers off the coast of a small Greek island called Antikythera stumbled upon a shipwreck. Among the shattered statues and ceramic jars, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood, so encrusted it seemed like worthless debris. For decades, it sat in a museum drawer, a forgotten curiosity. But then, researchers looked closer. X-ray and later advanced three-dimensional scanning revealed the truth hidden inside that calcified lump. It was not a piece of a statue, it was a machine, a complex clockwork device of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, housed in a wooden case no larger than a shoebox. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, and it would rewrite our understanding of ancient science. Dating to around 100 years before Common Era, this was not a simple sundial or water clock. It was a hand-powered analog computer, an intricate model of the universe built to be held in your hands. By turning a crank on the side, a user could advance time forward or backward. Dials on the front and back would then move with astonishing precision, displaying the positions of the sun and moon against the backdrop of the Zodiac, predicting lunar phases, and even forecasting solar and lunar eclipses. One dial tracked the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympics, turning celestial observation into a schedule for major cultural events. But the most breathtaking complexity lay in its modeling of the planets. Ancient astronomers knew that planets like Mars and Venus did not move in simple, uniform circles across the sky. They would sometimes slow down, stop, and even loop backwards in a motion called retrograde. The Greeks explained this with complex geometric theories involving circles within circles, known as epicycles. The genius of the Antikythera mechanism is that its maker found a way to translate those abstract geometric theories into physical bronze gears. Through a clever system of differential gearing, the device could replicate the planet's irregular, wandering paths, a mechanical simulation of the cosmos's apparent imperfections. It even accounted for a subtle celestial wobble called the precession of the equinoxes, a cycle that takes 26,000 years to complete. This was not just a calculator, it was a portable planetarium, a demonstration of a highly mathematical view of the heavens. It represents a fleeting peak of ancient technological thought, a fusion of astronomy, precision metalworking, and philosophical ambition that would not be seen again until the mechanical clocks of the European Renaissance, over 1,000 years later. Its existence forces us to ask a haunting question. How many other ideas, how many other glimpses of a different technological path were lost in the fragile transmission of knowledge? The Antikythera mechanism is a ghost, a single surviving whisper from a conversation between humanity and the cosmos that was nearly silenced. It stands as a powerful reminder that our journey to measure time has not been a straight, upward line of progress, but a story of brilliant peaks, devastating valleys, and knowledge patiently waiting in the dark to be found again. While the Antikythera mechanism modeled the heavens in bronze, another culture learned to navigate by them using nothing but memory and the human eye. On the vast, trackless Pacific Ocean, Polynesian voyagers achieved something that seems almost supernatural. They mastered time and space simultaneously, sailing thousands of miles between tiny islands without maps, without written records, and without a single mechanical instrument. Their tool was the night sky itself, memorized in breathtaking detail and passed down through generations in an unbroken oral tradition. They did not just look at the stars, they lived within a moving, three-dimensional map written in light. This was the art of wayfinding, and its foundation was a mental construct called the star compass. Imagine dividing the entire horizon around your canoe into 32 directional houses, like the points on a mariner's compass. But instead of magnetic north, each house was anchored to the precise rising or setting point of a specific, bright star. As one star would set in its designated house, another would rise in the house directly opposite, creating a celestial wheel that turned through the night. A master navigator, or PWO, had memorized the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars, using them as fixed directional beacons. He did not simply follow one star, he held his course by observing the constant procession of stars moving through their houses, maintaining his mental bearing even when clouds obscured his guiding light. This was celestial timekeeping in its purest, most dynamic form, using the predictable rotation of the star sphere as both a clock and a compass. But knowing direction was only half the puzzle. To find a speck of land in an ocean spanning millions of square miles, they needed to know their latitude, their north-south position. For this, they watched for a different celestial clue, the zenith star. A zenith star is one that passes directly overhead at its highest point. The navigators knew that specific, important stars passed directly over the islands they called home. As they sailed, they would watch for new stars to reach their zenith. When a star known to pass over their target island climbed to that highest point, they knew they had reached the same latitude and could then sail east or west along that celestial line until land appeared. They also understood seasonal star changes, recognizing that the height of certain constellations above the horizon would shift as they traveled north or south, providing another natural gauge of their position. This celestial knowledge was woven into a holistic understanding of the ocean itself. They read the long, rolling swells that reflected off distant islands, sensing land long before it was visible. They watched the flight patterns of certain seabirds, which would fly out to fish in the morning and return to land at dusk, revealing its direction. They learned to interpret the color and shape of clouds, which often gather over the warm landmass of an island, or reflect the green hue of a lagoon in their undersides. A voyage was timed not by a mechanical clock, but by this symphony of natural signs, by the rhythm of the stars overhead, the feel of the waves beneath the hull, and the behavior of life around them. This knowledge was not inscribed on stone or written on clay. It was carried in song, story, and chant, and physically embodied in the senses of the navigator. It was a living, breathing science of time and place that sustained entire civilizations across the Pacific for millennia. Sadly, with the arrival of European ships and modern instruments, this profound tradition nearly vanished, surviving in only a few elders by the mid-20th century. But in a powerful story of cultural revival, it has been brought back to life. In the 1970s, a pioneering organization called the Polynesian Voyaging Society built a replica of a traditional double-hulled canoe named Hokulea. Under the guidance of the last remaining master navigators from Micronesia, a new generation learned the old ways. In 1976, using only these ancient celestial methods, Hokulea successfully sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti, a voyage of over 2,500 miles, proving the incredible accuracy of the star compass to a skeptical modern world. This revival shows us that measuring time for navigation was not an abstract calculation, but an embodied knowledge, a deep conversation between a person and the cosmos. It stands in beautiful contrast to the monumental stone calendars and intricate bronze gears we have seen, reminding us that the human relationship with celestial time could also be fluid, oral, and carried in a single human memory across the widest ocean on Earth. This connection between time, the stars, and human destiny was not just practical, it was also profoundly mythic, shaping the very stories cultures told about their origins and their place in the universe. These celestial cycles were never just numbers on a dial. They were the very chapters of humanity's oldest stories. Across cultures, the relentless motion of the heavens demanded an explanation, and mythology provided the answer, transforming cold observation into epic narrative. In the frozen north, the Vikings saw not a solar system but a desperate, eternal chase. They told of two luminous wolves, Skal and Hati, forever pursuing the sun and moon across the sky. The occasional eclipse was a moment of terror when one of the wolves would finally catch its prey, only for it to slip away and continue the race. This was not merely a fanciful tale, it was a powerful mythic engine that explained the daily and monthly cycles, embedding the concept of recurring, predictable celestial motion into the very fabric of their worldview. It made the abstract tangible, giving the sun and moon a reason for their journey, and framing time itself as a dramatic, living process. This narrative scale could expand to breathtaking proportions. In Hindu cosmology, time unfolds in immense, rhythmic waves known as yugas. These are not years or centuries, but cosmic ages, each lasting millions upon millions of human years, cycling through golden, silver, bronze, and iron epochs of virtue and decline before the universe is dissolved and reborn in an endless loop. This concept places human history within an almost unimaginably vast temporal framework, where our entire recorded civilization is but a brief moment in a single declining age. It is a philosophical model that uses the idea of celestial cycles to grapple with morality, destiny, and the nature of existence itself, suggesting that time on a cosmic scale has a moral and spiritual rhythm. A different yet equally profound relationship between story, land, and sky emerges from Aboriginal Australian traditions. The dream time is not a past that is gone, but a sacred, eternal dimension that exists alongside the present. Within it, ancestral beings moved across the landscape, creating rivers, mountains, and also the stars. Their journeys and actions are etched into the night sky, with constellations telling the stories of their adventures. Here, the celestial map is a storybook, and time is not a linear march forward, but a layered reality. A particular star's rising might signal the season when a certain ancestral being performed a creation act, linking that celestial event directly to a specific place and a timeless story. This creates a living calendar where astronomy, geography, and law are inseparable, and keeping time means remembering and honoring the stories that shaped the world. These mythic frameworks did more than just explain. They gave meaning to the passage of time, making it memorable and sacred. A society that sees the moon as a god being reborn each month, or the winter solstice as the sun's annual struggle against darkness, experiences time emotionally and ritually. This transformed the abstract measurement of days into a participatory cosmic drama. The relentless turning of the sky became a story in which the community had a role to play, through festivals, offerings, and ceremonies designed to ensure the sun would keep running, the seasons would keep turning, and the cosmic order would be maintained. This deep human need to mark and celebrate time's passage, to align our communal rhythms with those of the heavens, is what gave rise to some of the most vibrant and enduring traditions in human history, the festival calendars that still shape our years today. That mythic need to participate in the cosmic story found its ultimate expression in the festival calendar. For ancient societies, these were not mere holidays. They were vital acts of maintenance, aligning human ritual with celestial events to ensure the world kept turning. The timing was everything, a sacred precision born from generations of watching the sky. High in the Andes, the Inca Empire faced a moment of profound anxiety each June, during the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. As the sun reached its farthest, weakest point, they performed Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun. This was a direct plea to the sun god Inti, a grand spectacle of music, dance, and sacrifice designed to coax the life-giving star back on its northward journey, to guarantee the return of warmth and the growth of crops. The ceremony, centered on the Coricancha, the temple of the sun in Cusco, was a state-sponsored reinforcement of the Inca ruler's divine connection, demonstrating that the emperor alone could mediate with the celestial powers that sustained the empire. Across the world, the rhythm of a different kind of calendar set the pace for remembrance. The Jewish calendar is a lunisolar masterpiece, skillfully blending the moon's monthly cycle of about 29.5 days with the solar year of 365 days. To keep the seasons in place, an extra month is added 7 times every 19 years. This complex dance ensures that Passover always falls in the spring month of Nisan. The festival commemorates a story of liberation from bondage, and its timing is deliberately anchored to the season of rebirth, of new lambs and sprouting barley. Here, a historical event of freedom is eternally linked to a cosmic moment of renewal, weaving human history directly into the fabric of the natural and celestial world. In East Asia, the most important celebration of the year, Chinese New Year, is also determined by this lunisolar balance. It falls on the second new moon after the winter solstice, placing it sometime between late January and mid-February. This marks not just a change on a chart, but the end of winter's stillness and the beginning of spring's energetic rise. Every tradition, from the thorough cleaning of homes to sweep away ill fortune, to the sharing of meals that symbolize family unity, is timed to this precise celestial pivot point, aligning personal and social renewal with the sun's renewed strength. These festivals did more than mark a date. They anchored entire communities to the heavens, reinforcing social bonds, religious beliefs, and a shared identity. The precise timing required meticulous observation, a task typically reserved for a priestly or scholarly class. This granted those calendar keepers immense influence. They held the knowledge of when to plant, when to harvest, when the gods expected worship, and when the king's legitimacy was ritually reaffirmed. Controlling the calendar meant controlling the rhythm of life itself, a power that was both spiritual and deeply political. This delicate balance of authority rested entirely on the calendar's accuracy. But what happened when that celestial clockwork began to drift, when the calendar no longer matched the sky it was meant to reflect? The consequences could unravel the very order it was designed to uphold. A calendar drifting out of sync was more than an administrative error, it was a cosmic crisis. The very rhythm of life, from planting to prayer, depended on the calendar matching the heavens, but the numbers refused to cooperate. The fundamental problem is beautifully simple and utterly frustrating. A solar year, the time it takes Earth to orbit the Sun, is not a neat 365 days. It is approximately 365.2422 days. That extra quarter of a day might seem insignificant, but it accumulates. Meanwhile, 12 cycles of the moon's phases add up to only about 354 days, falling short of the solar year by around 11 days. This mismatch meant that any calendar based purely on the moon would quickly lose its connection to the seasons, while a simple solar calendar would slowly see its fixed dates wander through the year. The consequences were not abstract, they were felt in the fields and the temples. Ancient Egypt's brilliant civil calendar was a model of solar simplicity, with 12 months of 30 days each plus 5 extra days at year's end, making a clean 365. But by ignoring that extra quarter day, the calendar slipped backwards by one full day every 4 years. Over a lifetime, the drift was noticeable. Over centuries, it was catastrophic. Imagine a calendar where the month named for the inundation of the Nile, the lifeblood of Egyptian agriculture, no longer aligned with the actual flood. Over the course of 1,460 years, the entire calendar would complete a full cycle through the seasons, a period known as the Sothic cycle. This meant the state was scheduling tax collections and religious festivals for seasons that no longer matched reality, creating administrative and spiritual chaos. The Roman calendar before reform became a legendary example of this chaos. By the time of Julius Caesar, the Roman year was so profoundly misaligned that the official harvest festival was being celebrated in the dead of winter. The political and religious leadership had been inserting extra months, called intercalary months, in an attempt to correct the drift, but this power was often abused for political gain, adding months to extend a favored official's term or withholding them to disrupt an opponent. The calendar had become less a reflection of cosmic order and more a tool of factional manipulation, so unreliable that citizens often ignored the official date entirely. This drift forced societies into a constant, ingenious struggle of correction. Some, like the Babylonians and later the Jewish calendar keepers, developed sophisticated lunisolar systems, periodically inserting a 13th month to snap the lunar cycle back into alignment with the solar year. Others wrestled with the solar count itself, the pressing need to fix this to restore harmony between human time and celestial time was not merely a technical puzzle, it was a matter of survival, legitimacy, and divine favor. It demanded the very best astronomical observation and, ultimately, the will of a powerful state to impose a new order on time itself. This struggle set the stage for one of the most enduring reforms in history, a change that would literally rename the months and reshape the Western world's relationship with the year. The chaos of a drifting calendar threatened the very logic of an empire. By the year 46 before Common Era, the Roman calendar had slipped so far from the seasons that the official start of spring was actually occurring in the middle of winter. This was more than an inconvenience, it was a profound breakdown in the relationship between state power and the natural order it claimed to govern. Julius Caesar, fresh from his campaigns and holding supreme authority, recognized that to rule an empire you must first rule time itself. He turned for a solution not to Roman priests but to the finest astronomical mind of the age, Sosigenes of Alexandria. This Egyptian scholar brought with him the accumulated wisdom of Hellenistic astronomy, a solar-centric precision that would cut through centuries of lunar confusion and political meddling. The reform Caesar enacted was breathtaking in its scope and simplicity. He declared that the current year, known to history as the Year of Confusion, would last for 445 days, a brutal but necessary reset to wrench the calendar back into alignment with the sun. From that point forward, the new Julian calendar would operate on a purely solar rhythm. It established a standard year of 365 days, divided into our familiar 12 months with their varying lengths. And then, to account for that stubborn extra quarter of a day, Sosigenes introduced a brilliant corrective, a single leap day added to the end of February every 4 years. This was a monumental conceptual shift. Time was no longer to be measured by the changing face of the moon, but by the sun's steady journey through the stars. It was an assertion that human reason, backed by imperial decree, could impose a clean, mathematical order on the cosmos itself. The calendar became a monument to that power. The month Quintilis, which held Caesar's birth date, was promptly renamed July in his honor. This act of naming cemented a new tradition, weaving the cult of political personality directly into the fabric of time. Future emperors would follow suit, with Augustus taking Sextilis, later August, and even attempting to steal a day from February to make his month as long as his predecessors. The calendar was now a map of imperial glory. For over 1,600 years, this system provided a stability the ancient world had never known. It synchronized the vast machinery of the Roman state and later the Christian Church, which adopted it for calculating Easter. Yet for all its genius, the Julian calendar contained a tiny, ticking flaw. Sosigenes' calculation of the solar year as 365.25 days was incredibly close but not perfect. The true solar year is about 365.2422 days. That difference of just 11 minutes per year seems trivial, but over centuries, those minutes add up to full days. By the late 16th century, this accumulated drift had pushed the calendar about 10 days out of sync with the equinoxes. The spring equinox, crucial for the Church's Easter calculations, was now arriving on March 11th instead of March 21st. Once again, the human measure of time had drifted from the celestial reality, and once again, it would take a powerful authority to correct it. This time, the call for reform would come not from an emperor, but from a pope. A 10-day error in the cosmic clock was a problem even the pope could not ignore. By the late 1500s, the spring equinox was arriving on the calendar nearly 2 weeks early, throwing the most important date in the Christian liturgical year into disarray. Easter, a celebration of resurrection tied symbolically to spring's renewal, was slowly drifting into winter. For Pope Gregory XIII, this was a theological and administrative crisis. The calendar, a human creation meant to reflect divine order, had fallen out of harmony with the heavens. His solution was to summon the best astronomers and mathematicians of the age, charging them with a task that blended faith, science, and raw political will. The result was the Gregorian reform of 1582, a surgical correction to the Julian calendar's lingering flaw. To instantly realign the calendar with the seasons, they simply deleted 10 days. That year, Thursday, October the 4th, was followed immediately by Friday, October the 15th. For anyone living through it, it must have felt like time itself had leaped forward. But the true genius lay in the new rule for the future. They refined the leap year system to an elegant precision. A year divisible by 4 would still be a leap year, except for centurial years, years ending in 2 zeros. Those century years would only be leap years if they were also divisible by 400. So the year 1700 was not a leap year, but the year 2000 was. This seemingly small adjustment brought the average length of the calendar year to 365.2425 days, astonishingly close to the actual tropical year of 365.2422 days. The error is now just 1 day in over 3,000 years. This was scientific accuracy achieved in the service of religious observance, a reminder that the drive to measure sacred time has often been the engine of our greatest precision. Yet this new, more perfect calendar was not immediately embraced by all. Its adoption became a story of gradual, sometimes reluctant, alignment. Catholic nations like Spain, Portugal, and Italy adopted it within the year. Protestant and Orthodox countries, wary of a decree from Rome, held out for decades or even centuries. Great Britain and its American colonies did not switch until 1752, by which time they had to skip 11 days. Greece, the last European holdout, finally adopted the Gregorian calendar in 1923. This staggered acceptance created a curious patchwork in historical records, where the same battle might be recorded under 2 different dates depending on which side wrote the report. Today, it is the undisputed global civil standard, the invisible framework for international trade, diplomacy, and daily life. Its near-universal adoption represents a final, profound triumph, the synchronization of human society under a single, shared rhythm derived from the motion of our planet around the sun. Yet even as this solar calendar conquered the world, another celestial rhythm, pure and unchanging, continued to govern the spiritual life of millions, offering a different kind of time entirely. While the solar year became the standard for global affairs, another celestial rhythm held its ground, refusing to be synchronized. The Islamic Hijri calendar remains a powerful testament to a purely lunar reckoning of time, where months are not anchored to the sun or the seasons, but solely to the moon's silent cycle. In this system, a new month begins not with an astronomical calculation locked in an almanac, but with the actual, physical sighting of the delicate crescent moon in the twilight sky. This practice connects the faithful directly to the heavens in a moment of communal witness, a tradition that dates back to the very foundation of the Muslim community with the Prophet Muhammad's migration from Mecca to Medina, an event which marks year 1 of the Hijri calendar. Because 12 lunar cycles total only about 354 or 355 days, the Hijri year is roughly 11 days shorter than the solar Gregorian year. This creates a fascinating cosmic drift. Islamic months slowly retrograde through the seasons, completing a full cycle approximately every 33 Gregorian years. The month of Ramadan, a sacred period of fasting from dawn to sunset, will therefore be observed in the long, hot days of summer and decades later in the short, cold days of winter. This intentional disconnection from the agricultural and solar cycle makes a profound spiritual statement. It emphasizes that acts of worship are not tied to harvests or solstices, but to a higher, transcendent rhythm. Fasting in Ramadan is about spiritual discipline and empathy, a practice that remains constant whether the days are long or short, shifting the focus inward rather than to the external, natural world. This creates a unique relationship with time, where the year is not a measure of earthly seasons, but a count of moons, a journey through phases of light and darkness that mirror spiritual renewal. Yet this beautiful tradition faces a very practical modern challenge, the moon sighting itself. The visibility of that thin crescent depends on a delicate interplay of factors: the moon's age, its distance from the sun, atmospheric conditions, and the observer's location on Earth. On a cloudy evening, an entire region might not see the moon, delaying the start of a holy month. In our interconnected world, where a global community seeks to celebrate together, this variability has sparked deep debate. Should the start of Ramadan be determined by local physical sighting, preserving the immediacy of the tradition? Or can it be established in advance using precise astronomical calculations that predict the crescent's visibility anywhere on Earth? This tension between tangible observation and universal calculation is not merely a technical dispute. It is a living conversation about how ancient faith navigates a globalized scientific age. It echoes the varied journey we have seen throughout history, the human struggle to harmonize celestial truth with communal practice, and it reminds us that even as one model of time achieves near-universal adoption for civil life, other rhythms, born of deep cultural and spiritual meaning, continue to turn, offering different ways to experience our place in the cosmos. The challenge of aligning two celestial rhythms required not just correction, but a masterful act of harmony, to balance the sun's steady march with the moon's quicker, shifting phases. Some of the world's most enduring cultures developed a brilliant hybrid system, the lunisolar calendar. This was not a choice between one cycle or the other, but a sophisticated attempt to honor both, weaving lunar months and solar years into a single, coherent tapestry of time. The traditional Chinese calendar stands as one of history's most elegant solutions to this puzzle. At its heart, it is a lunar calendar where each month begins with the new moon and lasts until the next, creating a cycle of 29 or 30 days. But Chinese society, deeply rooted in agriculture, could not afford to let its festivals and planting schedules drift through the seasons. The solution was a periodic intervention of cosmic engineering, the insertion of an intercalary or leap month. Roughly every 3 years, based on meticulous observation, an entire extra month would be added to the year. This was not done arbitrarily, but according to a precise rule tied to the solar terms, 24 points in the solar year that mark seasonal changes like the beginning of spring or the winter solstice. If a lunar month passed without containing a principal solar term, it was designated as the leap month, a repetition of the previous month's number. This ingenious method kept the lunar months in lockstep with the solar-based agricultural seasons. You can see this harmony celebrated in one of the most beautiful festivals, the Mid-Autumn Moon Festival. It always falls on the 15th day of the 8th lunar month, when the moon is at its fullest and brightest. Because of the lunisolar adjustment, this festival consistently occurs near the autumnal equinox, a time of harvest and family reunion under the most brilliant moon of the year. The calendar itself becomes a promise, ensuring that the poetic symbol of the full moon is always experienced in its proper seasonal context. A similar, yet distinct, philosophical and mathematical dance unfolds within the Hindu calendar system. Here, time is deeply sacred, and the calendar is a tool for determining the most auspicious moments for rituals, weddings, and festivals. It too is lunisolar, but its method of correction reveals a different kind of celestial observation. The Hindu system accounts for the fact that the sun's apparent path along the ecliptic is divided into 27 lunar mansions, or nakshatras. When the cycle of lunar months gets too far ahead of the solar year, an entire extra month, known as Adhik or the intercalary month, is inserted. The rules for this are complex, based on the relative positions of the sun and moon. Essentially, whenever two new moons occur while the sun is in the same zodiacal sign, that lunar month is considered Adhik a month outside the ordinary flow, dedicated to reflection, fasting, and spiritual practices. This is not seen as a mere correction, but as a sacred, purifying time. Creating and maintaining these systems was among the highest sciences of the ancient world. It required generations of astronomers to track the subtle discrepancies between lunar and solar cycles, to develop the mathematical models to predict them, and to encode those predictions into rules that priests and scholars could follow. The calendar maker was not just a technician, but a guardian of cosmic order. Philosophically, these lunisolar systems represent something profound, a world view that seeks balance in duality. They refuse to reject one celestial truth for another, instead finding a dynamic, living compromise between the sun's constancy and the moon's changeability. Time itself was perceived as a relationship, a conversation between two great forces. This intricate dance between observation, mathematics, and meaning would eventually face its greatest challenge, not from the stars, but from a new kind of timekeeper born in the depths of the earth. But the very act of measuring time forced a deeper question, one that every culture answered in its own way. What is time itself? Is it a circle or a line? The calendars and observatories we have explored were not just technical achievements. They were physical expressions of a civilization's most profound philosophy. For many ancient societies, time was not a one-way street, but a great wheel turning in majestic, repeating cycles. The mile-long count, with its backtons and catons, measured vast epochs that would eventually reset, ushering in a new world age. Hindu cosmology spoke of the endless dance of creation, preservation, and dissolution across unfathomable yugas. In these worldviews, history was not a unique march forward, but a pattern, a story told again and again with different characters. This cyclical perception offered a certain cosmic comfort, a promise of renewal. It suggested that decline was always followed by rebirth, that the universe operated on a principle of eternal return. This philosophy directly shaped how these cultures approached science and society. Their astronomical observations were often aimed at identifying and maintaining these grand cycles, ensuring that human rituals kept the cosmic wheel turning smoothly. Time was a sacred pattern to be honored and preserved. A fundamentally different perception emerged elsewhere, one that would come to dominate much of the modern Western mind. In the ancient Persian faith of Zoroastrianism, and later in the Judeo-Christian tradition, time took on a linear, narrative shape. It had a definitive beginning, a creation point, and was moving irreversibly toward a final culmination, an ultimate resolution of divine purpose. This was time as a story with a prologue, chapters, and an ending. This linear view transformed the meaning of history and human action. Events were unique, progress was possible, and individual choices could carry eternal significance because they were part of a singular, unrepeatable arc. This could inspire a powerful sense of mission and responsibility, a drive to build toward a future goal. Yet it could also foster a different kind of time anxiety, the fear of a final judgment or an apocalyptic end, a concept largely absent from purely cyclical models. Here, astronomy and calendar keeping served not just to maintain a cycle, but to mark progress along a sacred timeline, to calculate the distance from creation or the potential proximity to an end. These two perceptions, the circle and the line, are not just abstract ideas. They are the bedrock upon which cultures built their sense of identity and destiny. A society that sees time as cyclical might record history to find repeating patterns of wisdom and error, seeing kings and empires as manifestations of archetypal roles. A society with a linear view might chronicle history as a unique sequence leading to its own present, emphasizing innovation, legacy, and a definitive legacy. Their scientific inquiries were shaped by this foundation. The obsessive tracking of planetary cycles in a cyclical culture was a form of cosmic devotion, while the linear worldview's later pursuit of scientific laws can be seen as a search for the logical unfolding of a created order. Our modern world operates on a practical, linear timeline, yet we still feel the pull of the circle in our seasonal holidays, our personal cycles of growth, and even in the recurring patterns historians note in human events. Recognizing this deep philosophical layer allows us to see an ancient sundial or star chart as something far richer than a primitive clock. It is a fragment of a lost answer to the biggest question of all, a culture's statement on whether we are riding a wheel or walking a path. And as we will see, this very question of time's nature would be challenged by a discovery that suggested the cosmos itself might have a heartbeat entirely its own. The power to predict an eclipse was not a public science but a closely guarded secret. In nearly every ancient civilization we have explored, the celestial clockwork was not read by everyone, but by a select few, a priestly or scholarly elite who held the keys to time itself. These were the Babylonian astrologers in their towering ziggurats, the Egyptian temple astronomers who knew the secrets of the Decan stars, the Maya day keepers who could calculate the cycles of Venus, and the Inca amorters, the wise men who understood the solstice alignments. Their knowledge was not simply information, it was a form of sacred power, a direct line to the divine will written in the sky. By accurately predicting the turning of the seasons, the return of the Nile flood, or the ominous shadow of an eclipse, they demonstrated a unique ability to commune with the gods. This gave them immense influence over every aspect of society, from agriculture and law to warfare and royal succession. This monopoly on celestial knowledge served a crucial social function, reinforcing and legitimizing the existing hierarchy. A king or pharaoh's right to rule was often explicitly tied to this cosmic order. He was seen as the earthly counterpart to the sun god, or the one chosen to maintain the harmony between heaven and earth. The priests, as the interpreters of celestial signs, became the essential bridge, validating the ruler's authority by showing that his reign was in alignment with the stars. A successful prediction was proof of divine favor. A failed one could be a sign of a ruler's failing virtue. This created a powerful feedback loop, where controlling the calendar meant controlling the narrative of power itself. To protect this authority, the methods were often shrouded in secrecy, encoded not in plain manuals, but in layers of complex mythology, sacred geometry, and monumental architecture. The precise mathematical formulas of the Maya were recorded in codices accessible only to the elite, and the full meaning of Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid shafts was likely known only to an initiated few. This deliberate obscurity is what makes the work of modern historians and archaeologists so challenging and so fascinating. We are often piecing together a grand puzzle from fragments, a celestial detective story where a carved symbol, an alignment of stones, or a single line in a damaged clay tablet might hold the key to an entire worldview. This detective work continues to push the boundaries of our understanding, sometimes dramatically. The ongoing excavations at Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, a site dating back over 11,000 years, present a profound mystery. Here, before the invention of agriculture or pottery, hunter-gatherers erected massive, T-shaped stone pillars carved with intricate animal reliefs. Some researchers propose that these pillars were arranged to track celestial events, like the rising of certain stars. If true, this suggests that the human impulse to monumentally encode celestial knowledge, and perhaps the social structures of an elite group to guard that knowledge, may be far older than we ever imagined. It hints at a deep time where the first priests were also the first astronomers, using the unchanging stars to anchor a new and changing world. Göbekli Tepe stands silent on a windswept hill in Turkey, a riddle carved in limestone. Dated to around 9,000 years before Common Era, this is not a city or a fortress, but a series of circular enclosures built by hunter-gatherers, people who had not yet invented farming or pottery. Within these rings they erected massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing over 10 tons, carved with elaborate reliefs of scorpions, foxes, birds, and other animals. The sheer effort is staggering, a project that would have required hundreds of people cooperating for generations, all without the incentive of stored grain or permanent homes. Why would nomadic people invest such colossal labor? Some archaeologists looking at the site see more than a temple. They see a prehistoric observatory. The carvings themselves are the first clue. One prominent pillar, known as the vulture stone, shows a vulture, a scorpion, and a headless man. Researchers have proposed these are not random symbols, but a celestial map, with the animals representing constellations as they appeared in the night sky over 11,000 years ago. Even more provocative is a cluster of symbols that some interpret as depicting a swarm of comet fragments striking the Earth. Computer models suggest a known comet breakup occurred around 10,950 before Common Era, a date remarkably close to the site's earliest layers. Could Göbekli Tepe be a monument to a real, catastrophic celestial event, a warning from the sky etched in stone for future generations? The architecture adds another layer of mystery. The layout of the enclosures and the positioning of the central pillars may have been deliberately aligned to the rising points of specific stars, particularly those in the constellation we call Sirius. If this interpretation holds, it means these ancient builders were not just marking time by the sun and moon, but were carefully tracking the slower, grander precession of the stars, a cycle that takes 26,000 years to complete. This idea turns our traditional story of human development completely upside down. We have always assumed that agriculture came first, providing surplus food that allowed for settled life, specialization, and then monumental architecture and complex astronomy. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite sequence might be true. Perhaps it was the shared spiritual and intellectual drive to understand the cosmos, to build a permanent home for ritual and celestial observation, that first brought large groups of people together in one place for extended periods. This social experiment, this need to feed and organize a workforce for a sacred building project, may have been the very pressure that made agriculture necessary. In this light, the human obsession with measuring celestial time was not a product of civilization, but quite possibly its very spark. The site remains an enigma, its full meaning still buried. Yet its silent pillars pose a haunting question. How many other celestial clocks, built by minds we have yet to understand, are still waiting to be found beneath the soil? The desert floor of Peru holds a gallery so vast it can only be seen from the sky, stretching across nearly 250 square miles of the Nazca Plain. An array of straight lines, geometric shapes, and enormous figures of animals and plants are etched into the dark, stony ground. For nearly 2,000 years, these geoglyphs have whispered a secret, one that many believe is written in the language of the stars, while theories about their purpose range from ritual pathways to messages for deities. One of the most enduring ideas connects them directly to our story of celestial time. Researchers have long noted that many of the long, arrow-straight lines seem to point toward the horizon where the sun or significant stars would rise or set on specific dates, like the solstices or the December full moon. The famous hummingbird, the spider, the monkey, these colossal animal figures may not just be art, they could be symbols tied to constellations or to specific seasons within an annual calendar. Imagine a ceremonial procession led by priests along the precise path of a line that pointed directly to the rising sun on the day of the winter solstice. As they walked, they would not just be moving across the land, they would be tracing a celestial pathway, physically enacting the connection between the earth and the heavens. The entire desert becomes a kind of clock, not with hands that tick, but with alignments that mark the year's pivotal moments. This transforms the landscape itself into a sacred almanac, where timekeeping was not a private calculation but a public, physical journey integrated with ritual. While the evidence is not as precise as a geared mechanism or a written ephemeris, the theory speaks to a different philosophy of time, one that is embodied, walked, and experienced on a monumental scale. It is a reminder that the human desire to mark celestial time could be expressed not only in towering stone or intricate bronze, but also by drawing with the earth itself, creating a calendar so large it required the perspective of the gods, or in our modern age, the wings of an airplane, to be fully understood. These scattered monuments were not isolated experiments, but part of a global conversation with the sky. Far beyond the pyramids and Stonehenge, the earth itself is dotted with sites where stone was carefully placed to capture a fleeting moment of celestial light. In the green hills of Ireland, a great grass-covered mound called Newgrange predates the pyramids by centuries. Its entrance is guarded by a massive, intricately carved curbstone, but the true secret lies within. A narrow roof box, a slit above the doorway, was engineered with astonishing precision. For just a few minutes at dawn around the winter solstice, when the sun is at its weakest point in the entire year, a single, narrow beam of sunlight pierces this opening. It travels down a long, dark passageway over 60 feet into the heart of the mound to illuminate the central burial chamber. This was not an accident of construction. It was a deliberate, dramatic symbol of rebirth, a promise that even in the deepest dark of midwinter, the sun's life-giving power would return. It transformed a tomb into a clock and a calendar, marking the most important turn of the year with a shaft of golden light. Across the Atlantic, in the arid canyonlands of the American Southwest, another ingenious solar marker was carved into a cliff face. At a site in Choco Canyon called Fajada Butte, 3 large stone slabs lean against the rock. Behind them, ancient Puebloan artists pecked a spiral petroglyph into the sandstone. On the summer solstice, a dagger of sunlight, sliced by the edges of the slabs, plunges directly through the center of the spiral. On the equinoxes, a dagger of light perfectly brackets the spiral's form. This sun dagger is a breathtakingly elegant and public display of celestial knowledge, a solar calendar etched directly into the landscape for the community to witness. It required no priestly interpretation in a hidden chamber. The sun itself performed the ritual, its light becoming the pointer on a cosmic dial. Back in Egypt, the scale of celestial architecture reaches its zenith at the Temple of Karnak. This vast complex, built and expanded over 2,000 years, is a stone forest of towering columns and colossal statues. Its main axis was laid out with such care that on the summer solstice, an observer standing at the sacred lake could watch the sun rise directly along the central avenue of the temple, flooding the innermost sanctuaries with light. This alignment reinforced the pharaoh's divine role as the intermediary with the sun god Amun-Ra, literally bathing the heart of state religion in solar glory on the longest day of the year. These examples, from Ireland to New Mexico to Egypt, are threads in a global tapestry. They reveal a pattern so widespread it cannot be coincidence. From the plains of Cambodia to the mountains of Peru, ancient builders repeatedly and independently oriented their most sacred structures to the sun, moon, and stars. This suggests a deep, shared human impulse, a universal recognition of celestial order that demanded physical expression. Studying this pattern is the work of a fascinating field called archaeoastronomy, which blends archaeology and astronomy to read the intentions in ancient stone. It allows us to see that these buildings were far more than shelters or tombs. They were three-dimensional models of a culture's cosmology, permanent prayers built from rock and aligned to the heavens. The temple was a mountain echoing the world axis, the tomb was a microcosm of the underworld sky, and the observatory was a machine for capturing time. This architectural language speaks of a world where the boundary between the earthly and the celestial was thin, where humans built bridges of stone to touch the turning wheel of the cosmos. And if their buildings were models of the universe, then the stars themselves provided the vocabulary, a symbolic language written across the night. That path of the sun across the starry background is a highway of time itself. Ancient sky watchers noticed that as the sun completed its annual journey, it passed in front of a specific parade of star patterns. They mapped this path, the ecliptic, and divided it into 12 equal segments, each 30 degrees wide, anchored by a constellation. This was the birth of the Zodiac, a celestial belt that became humanity's first grand coordinate system in the sky. Its origins are deeply practical, rooted in the river valleys of Mesopotamia. Babylonian priest astronomers, meticulously recording planetary movements for divination, needed a consistent way to note positions. By naming the constellations along the ecliptic and marking the sun's passage through them, they created a reliable, repeatable map. This was not initially about personal fortune, but about marking the solar year with stellar signposts. When the sun entered the constellation of Aries, it signaled a specific season. When it moved into Libra, another. The zodiac transformed the year from a vague cycle of seasons into a precise, 12-part journey measured against the fixed stars. The Greeks later inherited and refined this system, giving us the familiar names and symbols we recognize today, from the ram of Aries to the fishes of Pisces. They formalized the 12 equal divisions, creating a clean, mathematical grid across the heavens. This grid was a revolutionary tool for prediction. An astronomer could now say with certainty that Jupiter would be passing through the segment of Taurus at a specific future date, or that a lunar eclipse would occur when the moon was in the portion of the sky held by Scorpio. The zodiac provided the language and the ruler for these forecasts, turning the sky into a predictable, measurable clock. But the human mind is a storyteller, and a map this elegant demanded a narrative. Over centuries, rich mythologies were woven around these star patterns. The scorpion that killed the hunter Orion, the twins Castor and Pollux sailing with the Argonauts, the lion slain by Hercules. These stories were projected onto the constellations, turning the zodiac into a celestial storybook. The yearly journey of the sun through these signs became a cosmic epic, retold annually. This is where astronomy and astrology, for a time, were inseparable branches of the same study. The symbolic meanings attached to the signs, and later the idea that their positions at one's birth could influence character, grew from this narrative fusion. While modern science separates the mathematical utility of the zodiac from its astrological interpretations, we must appreciate the original, profound insight. By creating this 12-fold division, ancient cultures achieved something magnificent. They took the vast, seemingly chaotic dome of the night and imposed a beautiful order upon it, an order that allowed them to track the complex dance of planets, measure the solar year with stellar precision, and embed their myths into the very fabric of time. The zodiac stands as a testament to the human desire to find pattern, meaning, and story in the silent march of the heavens. Even the fixed stars are not truly fixed. Over a span of time so vast it defies ordinary comprehension, the entire canopy of the night sky imperceptibly shifts. This is the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble in Earth's rotational axis, like a spinning top winding down. Over a cycle of approximately 26,000 years, this wobble causes the sun's position against the backdrop of stars at the equinox to drift backward, completing one full circuit through the 12 constellations of the zodiac. This discovery revealed a celestial clock of such immense scale it redefined humanity's place in time, introducing the concept of the Great Year. Ancient Greek astronomer Hipparchus is most famously linked to this revelation around 130 years before Common Era. By meticulously comparing his own observations of star positions with records from Babylonian astronomers made centuries earlier, he detected a subtle but undeniable shift. The point where the sun crossed the celestial equator at the spring equinox was no longer aligned with the same constellation. It had slipped backward, moving from Aries into Pisces. This was not an error in the old records. It was evidence of a cosmic motion grander and slower than anyone had previously conceived. It meant the very framework of the sky, the zodiac itself, was slowly turning against the march of the seasons. This great year, sometimes called the Platonic year, introduced a timescale that dwarfed human history, where solar and lunar calendars measured the rhythm of life and seasons. Precession measured the tempo of the cosmos itself. It suggested that time operated on multiple, nested layers, from the daily arc of the sun to this majestic 26,000-year cycle. This idea deeply influenced philosophical and mystical thought, feeding into concepts of world ages, cosmic rebirth, and the idea that civilization itself might rise and fall in time with these grand celestial turns. While Hipparchus gets the credit in Western tradition, Tantalizing clues suggest other cultures grappled with this slow drift. The long count calendar of the Maya, with its obsession with cycles spanning thousands of years, may have been an attempt to track this precessional movement. More concretely, the Antikythera Mechanism, that ancient Greek analog computer, included a dial that many researchers believe modeled this very cycle, accounting for the slow shift of the zodiac. This implies the knowledge of precession was more widespread among ancient astronomers than our surviving texts reveal. They understood that their celestial maps were not permanent, but merely a single frame in an unimaginably slow cosmic film. The ultimate lesson of precession is one of profound humility. It shows that even our most stable celestial landmarks, the pole star and the equinoctial points, are temporary. The star we call Polaris today was not the North Star for the builders of the Great Pyramid, who aligned to Theban, and it will not be the North Star for future civilizations. The entire sky is in a slow, graceful dance, and the cosmic clock ticks to a rhythm we can measure but scarcely experience. This adds a final, deepest layer to ancient timekeeping, revealing that the heavens themselves are a story written in ultra-slow motion, a story in which every human civilization occupies but a fleeting paragraph. The same celestial question could be answered in stone on opposite sides of the world. How do we explain the uncanny similarities in how cultures, separated by vast oceans and millennia, learn to read the sky? The grand solstice alignments at Stonehenge, the Pyramid of Giza, and Machu Picchu present a fascinating puzzle for historians. Did each civilization independently invent the idea, or was this knowledge whispered along forgotten trade routes? This debate between independent invention and cultural diffusion lies at the heart of understanding our shared astronomical heritage. On one hand, the basic ingredients were universally available: the same sun, the same moon, the same stars wheeled overhead for every human community. Faced with the universal needs of agriculture, ritual, and survival, it is entirely plausible that brilliant minds in Britain, Egypt, and Peru separately arrived at the same profound conclusion, that the solstices were the pillars of the year. This theory of parallel development celebrates the incredible, innate human capacity for pattern recognition and innovation. Yet, the possibility of some ancient, indirect exchange of ideas is tantalizing. While conclusive evidence of direct contact between the Old World and the Americas before Columbus remains elusive and hotly debated, we know that within the interconnected continents of Africa, Asia, and Europe, astronomical wisdom flowed like a slow, deep river. The Great Silk Road was not just a conduit for silk and spices, it was a highway for the mind. Along its dusty paths traveled merchants, diplomats, and scholars, carrying with them the celestial mathematics of Babylon and the geometric models of Greece. This knowledge seeped into India, where it merged with local traditions to enrich Hindu astronomy, and later into China, where it influenced calendar science and instrument design. The transmission was fragile, often hanging by a thread. Consider the work of the Greek astronomer Claudius Ptolemy. His monumental text, the Almagest, synthesized centuries of Greek astronomical knowledge into a comprehensive model of the cosmos. After the decline of the Western Roman Empire, this foundational work might have been lost to Europe forever. Its survival depended on the meticulous work of Islamic scholars in the Middle East, who translated, studied, and critiqued Ptolemy's work, preserving and advancing it during Europe's so-called Dark Ages. Centuries later, these Arabic translations were themselves translated into Latin, flowing back into Europe to help ignite the scientific revolution. This cycle of loss, preservation, and rediscovery is a humbling reminder of how delicate our chain of knowledge truly is. It suggests that the grand story of celestial timekeeping is not a series of isolated genius, but a sprawling, collective human project. Each culture added its own piece to the puzzle, sometimes independently, sometimes by building on the insights of others. A Babylonian lunar cycle, a Mayan Venus table, a Polynesian star compass, all are chapters in a single, ongoing epic, the human quest to find our rhythm in the cosmos. This inheritance, built piece by piece across thousands of years, now rests in our hands, a legacy written not in any one language, but in the universal grammar of mathematics and observed light. The mechanisms of our modern world are built on ancient celestial foundations. Every time you glance at a clock and see 60 minutes in an hour, you are reading a number system perfected by Babylonian astronomers watching the planets. When you measure an angle with 360 degrees, you are using the same convenient base of 60 they developed for their calculations. Our global calendar, the Gregorian, is a direct descendant of Julius Caesar's solar reform, later refined under a pope's decree to correct a 10-day drift. These are not mere historical footnotes, they are the living architecture of our daily reality, proof that our most fundamental units of time and space were forged in the observatories and temples of the ancient world. This legacy pulses through our annual rhythms. The date of Easter is not fixed on your wall calendar. It dances according to a complex lunisolar rule, falling on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the spring equinox. This is the same kind of balancing act between sun and moon that occupied Chinese and Hindu calendar keepers for millennia. Chinese New Year is determined by the second new moon after the winter solstice, a precise celestial event that families across the globe wait for to begin their celebrations. These are not arbitrary holidays, they are festivals of time itself, ancient astronomical observations that continue to dictate moments of family, faith, and cultural renewal in the 21st century. The very methods of discovery have ancient echoes. Today, astronomers hunting for planets around distant stars use a technique called the transit method. They monitor the light of a star, watching for a tiny, periodic dip in brightness that occurs when an orbiting planet passes in front of it. This is the same fundamental principle ancient sky watchers used, just with infinitely more precise instruments. They track the periodic brightening and dimming of planets like Venus, or the predictable loops of Mars against the stars, to understand the cycles of our own solar system. We are still looking for rhythmic patterns in the light, still trying to decode the clocks of distant worlds. Even our most advanced technologies must bow to celestial truths. The global positioning system that guides your phone relies on a network of satellites carrying incredibly precise atomic clocks. For the system to work, those clocks must account for effects predicted by Einstein's theory of relativity, where time itself runs slightly faster in the weaker gravity of orbit than it does on Earth's surface. If engineers ignored this, GPS would drift into uselessness within hours. This is a modern, hyper-technical version of the same struggle ancient priests faced when their calendar drifted out of sync with the seasons. Both are battles to align human-made measurements with the deeper, non-negotiable rhythms of the universe. By tracing this lineage, we see our own relationship with time in a new light. The second, the hour, the month of July, these are not natural facts waiting to be discovered. They are constructed artifacts, cultural inventions refined over millennia, each one a chapter in humanity's long conversation with the cosmos. They remind us that time is not just something we measure, but something we have continually shaped with our observations, our mathematics, and our myths. This perspective invites a quiet reflection, a moment to consider not just how we keep time, but why this quest has been so central to the human story from its very beginning. From the silent stones of Solstice dawn to the intricate bronze gears of a forgotten shipwreck, we have walked through a gallery of celestial clocks, each one, whether etched into a desert plain or calculated on a clay tablet, tells the same profound story of human ingenuity. Our ancestors looked up at the vast, star-filled expanse and did not see chaos. They saw a grand, predictable order. They observed the sun's unwavering path, the moon's reliable phases, the planet's patient wanderings, and they asked a revolutionary question: how can we measure this? Their answers became the foundations of civilization itself. They transformed those celestial motions into the stone circles that marked the seasons for planting, the pyramids that aligned a king's soul with the eternal stars, and the calendars that scheduled both sacred festivals and the taxes of an empire. Timekeeping was never just a practical task. It was the act of weaving human life into the cosmic tapestry, of finding our rhythm within the universe's great song. That impulse to build meaning from the patterns overhead is perhaps the most universal human story of all. It connects the Babylonian priest watching for omens to the Polynesian navigator steering by the zenith star, the Maya day keeper calculating a Venus cycle to the Roman emperor reforming the calendar. They all participated in the same grand project, using the heavens to understand their place in the world, to legitimize power, to navigate the unknown, and to satisfy a deep, shared curiosity about the nature of existence. Today, our tools are different. We have split the second with atomic vibrations and sync our lives to digital pulses transmitted from satellites, yet that fundamental desire remains unchanged. We still seek to measure, to predict, to find order. Our modern time is built upon the very units and concepts those ancient sky watchers invented, a living legacy in every hour of 60 minutes and every circle of 360 degrees. So the next time you glance at a clock or mark a date on a calendar, remember the long celestial journey that made that simple act possible, and perhaps on a clear night, take a moment to look up. See the stars not just as distant lights, but as the original clock face, the first calendar pages, the silent partners in humanity's oldest and most enduring quest to measure our journey through time. If this exploration of how ancient cultures spoke the language of the cosmos resonated with you, I invite you to join our community. Subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of our shared past. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these ancient timekeeping systems, from the solstice alignments to the star compass, fascinated you the most? Share your reflections in the comments